This is 9 News Local.
Good evening, I'm Natasha Soper. New South Wales has seen a welcome drop in COVID-19 cases, with 18 new infections recorded in the past 24 hours. All but one of those are linked to known cases. But what has authorities concerned tonight is that a number of them were moving around the community while infectious. Premier Gladys Berejiklian warning the state that case numbers could rise in the coming days.
We have to be prepared for the numbers to bounce around, and we also have to be prepared for the numbers to go up considerably, because as experience shows with this strain, we are seeing almost 100% of transmission within households.
A more than 30-person party at West Hoxton in Sydney's West remains a concern with health officials. The super spreading event now infecting 24 people. The Health Minister today reiterating the importance of vaccination.
Not one of those 24 people were vaccinated. I can also advise that 6 health workers who attended at that party who were fully vaccinated, not one of those people has been infected.
Greater Sydney, Wollongong and Shellharbour enter day 2 of lockdown as regional communities get used to tighter restrictions. And officers have been out in force to ensure everyone is abiding by the rules, but a Shellharbour cafe has been caught up in a COVID compliance blitz after employees refused to wear a mask. 9 News Local was there as police pounced.
Anthony Riali calls himself a freedom fighter, but today he was arrested by police.
Listen, relax.
Marched out of Shellharbour's Village Fix Cafe and detained by detectives for allegedly refusing to wear a mask.
Do you think it's irresponsible not to be wearing a mask during a global pandemic?
I have no comment, bro.
During the morning coffee run, police say the public dobbed him in. A visit all too familiar for officers, handing the owner a $1,000 fine just yesterday after she too refused to mask up. The 38-year-old was given strict bail conditions and lashed out on our cameras.
I don't consent.
We're in a public place.
I don't consent.
We're in a public place.
Don't consent.
The cafe took to social media saying they're supported by human rights advocates.
Go on Instagram, pull up some stuff again.
Well, on Instagram, some people seem to be a bit upset with what you're doing, sir.
Some people are all behind me too, yeah? You make a decision.
His supporters angry and agitated when he was led away by police.
Tantamount to aggravated armed kidnapping, which is punishable by 25 years in maximum security prison.
Over 44 rule breakers were fined across the state. 2 men slapped with infringements after becoming lost in the Royal National Park when a deer scared them from the beach, crews finding the pair naked several hours later. Most adhered to the restrictions. At the Illawarra, it was final drinks and lights out.
It's a bit of an end of the world kind of vibe today, but it's still tough, you know, like you just got to shut everything down. We've got to try and, give away what food we have in our cool rooms. And
at 2 p.m. on Sunday, the Wingdang Bridge was going to be the divide between lockdowns in Wollongong and freedom in Shellharbour, until a last-minute backflip to include the Shellharbour LGA in Greater Sydney, giving 70,000 residents just minutes to prepare for a 14-day shutdown.
If there was active cases, I would expect that we would be in lockdown. I'm just not sure that there is any reason for it at this stage.
Jack Hahn, 9 News.
And following concerns raised by residents in Kiama, the Illawarra Shoalhaven Health District will establish a drive-through clinic to ensure people can get tested locally. It will open tomorrow. Rex Airlines has confirmed its flights from Sydney to Canberra and regional New South Wales will continue to take off despite the latest travel restrictions. A limited number of services will be available for essential travellers. Passengers are being urged to check the airline and state government websites for any changes. Meanwhile, the economic cost of a lockdown can be up to $850 million a week, with the real impact already being felt by businesses in regional New South Wales who are expecting a roaring school holiday trade. The opposition is now calling for the state government to roll out emergency payments to workers affected.
For Elaine Hamer, these school holidays were meant to be a bumper.
Every school holidays, I'm fully booked.
Her hopes of making top dollar now dashed as the growing COVID outbreak blocks tourists travelling from the big smoke.
almost a quarter of my annual income, and add to that 4 casual staff that have no work over the school holidays.
Meanwhile, one of the biggest events on Bathurst's winter calendar has been forced to downsize. The regional mask mandate and capacity limits coming hours before the winter festival's opening night.
Without a doubt there's going to be monetary loss because we won't be able to have the full extent of the ice rink, you won't have the full extent of the people getting on the rides, so there's going to be an impact.
The news sparking a last-minute scramble for organisers.
We then had to sit down, are we able to do it, how can we do it? So look, everything was done last minute, but I think everything is done very well.
All Sydney food vendors forced to return home as the city plunged into lockdown. Meanwhile, festival goers told to don masks along with their ice skates, while capacity limits have been cut.
There was a couple of events on Saturday night we had to reduce. We had to then look at the ice rink and reduce numbers there.
Down south in the Riverina, Wagga Wagga pub manager Joe Salvestro says the lack of holiday foot traffic is already hurting at the hip pocket.
We see a lot of families come through for meals and lunches and dinners and stuff, so even our accommodation bookings have actually dropped down even in the last couple of days. I think it's going to impact not just our business but the whole of Wagga.
But despite the financial cost, Joe is urging Sydney-siders to stay home.
We're all in this together and we just want everyone to be safe and, follow the rules, and that's all we ask.
Hannah Taylor, 9 News.
A National Cabinet is right now meeting for an urgently arranged discussion between the PM and state and territory leaders as several parts of the country face COVID crises. Political reporter Rachel Baxter has more.
It's the second emergency National Cabinet meeting in a week. Leaders will discuss mandatory vaccinations for aged care workers. The Prime Minister also wants to talk about problems in quarantine, which have sparked recent outbreaks, including housing low-risk domestic travellers next to high-risk arrivals from overseas. That's how a Northern Territory mine worker caught the virus in Queensland, and also vaccinations for quarantine workers after an unvaccinated limo driver sparked the Bondi cluster. These are issues that the states are responsible for, but we've seen the premiers raise their own complaints today about the pace of the vaccine rollout, demanding more supply from the Commonwealth.
Have to plan for the weeks and months ahead. And I'm getting frustrated that people aren't doing that at other levels. We need to plan ahead for the future. We need to make sure the vaccine is accessible to our all population and we have those doses available.
Meanwhile, Treasurer Josh Frydenberg's focus has been on how the pandemic will hit generations to come, releasing the intergenerational report which reveals Australia's population will be smaller and older in 40 years' time.
We've never truly seen in any of the intergenerational reports by the government this kind of awareness, perhaps, of the impending crisis that we have.
Australia's population is expected to hit 38.8 million by 2061.
Rachel Baxter there. Canberrans have today had to mask up for the first time since the start of the pandemic as the ACT takes every precaution to stop COVID from making its way into the territory. It comes as leaders were given a walkthrough of the nation capital's next vaccination clinic.
The capital's third mass vaccination hub ready for takeoff in the Canberra Airport precinct.
This clinic that we're going to commence operations in tomorrow is a significant addition to Canberra's vaccine rollout.
At least 1,500 Pfizer jabs will be administered at the new site every week, with availabilities until July 29 already booked out.
But it is taking bookings beyond that.
The steps to ramp up protection against the virus comes as Canberrans have been told to mask up. From today, face coverings are mandatory, the first for the ACT since the start of the pandemic.
I personally think it's a really good idea just because we do want the community to be safe.
It's a bit of an inconvenience, but I think it's a small price to pay for the risk of spreading COVID.
But the new measure leading to panic buying, with supermarket shelves emptied of toilet paper and masks.
You can get masks, and particularly ones that are reusable.
This comes as the Sydney lockdown is now impacting our city. South Australia slamming its borders shut to the ACT, and a group from New South Wales escorted by police out of the territory after breaching stay-at-home orders in their home state by being in a Braddon hotel.
ACT Policing are being proactive in their engagement with the hotel industry.
With the ACT hoping the latest outbreak will not make its way into the territory, Canberrans are reminded to get tested if they have symptoms, nearly 3,000 coming forward in the past 3 days. The Epic and Western Creek testing clinics are seeing huge numbers, with people urged to self-isolate if they can't get a swab immediately. Kimberly Keynes, 9 News.
Up next, drugs and firearms seized from a Riverina home. Why the man inside allegedly ran from police. An inquest begins into the death of a toddler killed in a crash in Canberra 3 years ago. Plus the plea to upgrade sporting facilities in a bid to bring more professional games to the regions. A Tumut man has been refused bail after police uncovered several illegal firearms across the Riverina. Officers raided homes in Tumut and Bombali, seizing 7 guns, including a sawn-off shotgun, as well as an assault rifle, gel blaster, aerosol cannons and drugs. The 25-year-old has been charged with a string of serious offences, including acquire firearm with no licence or permit. Police are tonight searching for a Central West man who disappeared from Bathurst almost a week ago. Chase Thompson was last seen leaving a Kelso pub in the early hours of Wednesday morning. Officers say the 25-year-old may be driving a white Mazda ute. Geo-targeting text alerts have been issued to the city's residents. A man has faced court for the first time, accused of stabbing another man in a Riverina pub. Pat Fordham has more.
Molalasami, Molalatui, Afagogo is accused of knifing another man in the back and head at a Junee pub over the weekend. The Locomotive Hotel was transformed into a crime scene in the early hours of Saturday morning. Police and paramedics rushed to the Hill Street venue just after 1:30 a.m. after reports a man had been stabbed. It's alleged 26-year-old Afagogo became involved in a violent altercation with 26-year-old man Junior Molipola Ione before stabbing him in the neck, back and torso. Mr Ione was rushed to Wagga Base Hospital where he remains in a serious but stable condition. Mr Afagogo fronted Wagga Local Court this morning via video link. He's been charged with wounding a person with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. The case returns to court in August.
Pat Fordham there. The Corney family were on their way to a toy store when a delivery truck slammed into them as they waited at traffic lights on the Monero Highway, instantly killing 4-year-old Blake, who was sitting in the back. Almost 3 years to the day, the court has heard the horrifying details of the crash as the first day of an inquest into the toddler's death began in Canberra. Our reporter Kimberly Keynes has more.
Today, a coronial inquiry into the death of 4-year-old Blake Corney focused on whether this tragedy could have been avoided and what more can be done to stop similar incidents from happening in the future. In July 2018, the Corney family were on their way to Toys R Us when a 7-ton truck ploughed into the back of their Ford Territory as they stopped at a red light on the Monero Highway. The heavy vehicle travelling at 70 kilometres per hour hit the car, instantly killing the toddler who was in the back seat with his younger brother at the time. Today, parents Camille and Andrew sat through the evidence given from witnesses and experts on road safety and driver fatigue gathered during the year-long inquiry. Mr Corney reliving the day his son was killed, calling for changes on hiring truck drivers and anti-distraction technology.
I really hope that for both of us that no one else has to step into our shoes again. If some good work can come out of this, it's a hole in our hearts that will never be mended.
A cost-benefit analysis of mandating automatic emergency braking technology in heavy vehicles was tabled today, which will form part of the Chief Coroner's report and possibly recommendations of change for the ACT government. The driver of the truck is currently serving a 3-year and 3-month jail sentence for culpable driving and will be eligible for parole next May. While the inquest will never bring back Blake Corney, his parents hope his death won't be in vain and that changes they have recommended will be made to save lives. The hearing continues.
Kimberly Keynes there. The pandemic has once again thrown professional sports draws into disarray, but according to sports clubs in regional New South Wales, it could be a golden opportunity, with COVID providing the perfect chance to attract more top-tier matches. The community is calling on council to quickly upgrade local facilities.
With their masks on, Sydney's AFL teams make a dash for the border. COVID again proving a challenge for professional sporting codes. But Mark Geppert from Riverina AFL says it could be the perfect opportunity.
We've got a really good shell here in Wagga from a elite standard perspective. It's got all the makings of a fantastic regional venue.
While the city has hosted its share of top-tier games in the past, most recently the Round 9 Raiders vs Knights clash. They've all been afternoon fixtures, and sports officials say its locals want to see more high-calibre action. The ovals need better lights.
Yeah, it would, and obviously the issue that we've got with the night games in pre-season is the standard of our lights. There is a pretty big high sort of expectation around the lighting. We don't actually have a venue regionally that can host night games. But the councils, I know Wagga Council and Albury Council have spoken about getting them up to those standards.
In a statement to 9 News, local council says it's already begun investigations to upgrade lights at both Robertson Oval and McDonald Park as part of its recreation open space plan, but concedes the upgrades will not occur in the short term.
It's something that has been on our agenda for quite some time, but we haven't got around to it at this stage. It will happen, but probably not in the short term.
Pat Fordham, 9 News.
Stay with us. Up next in sport, all the action from the Blues series winning game against the Maroons. And the Brumbies women's captain speaks out on how they'll bounce back from their loss in the Super W League. It is what it is. Corey Norman has backed the Dragons' decision to not...
I'd prefer to stay in Australia. Obviously, I know my big paydays are been and gone now, so it ain't even about the money anymore.
Following a one-week hiatus, the Dragons are preparing to take on the Warriors in Gosford this Friday. The New Zealand team will be without Ewan Aiken and Josh Curran, who have been forced to isolate after being on a flight with a cabin crew member who tested positive to COVID-19. New South Wales has picked up where they left off from State of Origin 1, running riot over Queensland to claim a dominant series win. Strike centre Latrell Mitchell proved the difference, inspiring the brilliant Blues to a record-breaking 26-0 victory.
Out for revenge.
What a win. Brumbies women's captain Michaela Leonard believes the team will learn from its mistakes following a disappointing day on the field, going down to the Presidents 19-13 in round 2 of the Super W. She admits it's been a challenging few days, with all teams now based in Coffs Harbour due to COVID-19.
Really proud of the girls over the last few days to just adapt and to cope and to readjust to what's been happening. The situation changes hour by hour.
The Brumbies women are now preparing to take on the New South Wales Waratahs on Wednesday at the Coffs International Stadium. Ahead in 9 News Local, Gavin Morris with all your local weather details for the week ahead.
Good evening. We've got a brand new week ahead of us and it's shaping up nicely so far. Not a bad start. Cold this morning right throughout the Monero, the capital, and over the alpine areas. We've had the clear, cold nights return, great snowmaking weather yet again. Mid-teens felt right along the coast. Now, we've got all the shower activity that's starting to stream in across the northern New South Wales coast, and that's going to start creeping a little bit further south. Inland, fine. We'll take a 19 afterwards. A cold start there for Dubbo, very chilly. Big high passing over the southeast, and that is helping to generate this onshore influence, which is mostly going to affect the Illawarra, Shoalhaven area and the adjacent highlands, but otherwise it's all fine. Very little going on around the nation to kickstart the week. There is a strong front on approach. That's going to roll across the southwest land division throughout tomorrow. More cold in behind it. But there's all of that coastal shower activity for us. Generally fine. Beautiful weather is on the way for the majority of southern New South Wales and the capital, but cold again. brilliant conditions for snowmaking here. It is going to be very calm and therefore very still. Conditions make for great snowmaking weather here. All that cold air sinks into the valleys, temperature inversions for Thredbo, but they'll be making snow all night. Good stuff. Further south, it is going to be fine. Bigger Valley will be stunning. But once we start moving further north, from about Bateman's Bay, the further north you are, the greater chance of seeing a little bit of wet weather. Showers, there it is around Shoalhaven, the Illawarra, and across the Highlands. But as we move to the slopes and the Riverina, we're looking at tops about 16, 17, generally fine, partly cloudy, more cold starts right throughout the central West Plains as well. But overall, beautiful winter days as temperatures try to climb into the high teens for most low-lying areas. On the tablelands, we're looking about 13 for Orange, 14 for Bathurst. And the Blue Mountains going to see a little bit of increased cloud cover and a brief isolated shower or two.
Thanks, Gavin. That's 9 News Local for this Monday. I'm Natasha Soper. Enjoy your evening. Have a great night.